My name's Eldon Kurt, and this is my podcast about wildlife, a book by Cynthia DeFelice. This is section 1 of the plot analysis. So the main character of this book's name is Eric. Eric is about 12 years old and lived with his parents in New York. His parents were both on the Army Reserves and got called to the war in Iraq. Eric was forced to move to North Dakota with his grandparents, which he didn't know very well and did not get along with very well. Eric had recently completed a hunter safety course in New York to go with his best friend and his dad pheasant hunting, but he was very disappointed when he found out he had to move to North Dakota and couldn't go hunting anymore. When he got to North Dakota, things were very different. When Oma, his grandma, and Big Daryl, his grandpa, picked him up at the airport, they drove for about 4 hours of just nothingness. Abandoned towns, abandoned houses, abandoned farms, just wide open land, the middle of nowhere, to get to their home farm. When they got there, Eric was quickly disappointed that they didn't have a TV, or they didn't have a computer, and the TV they had only got 3 channels. Eric also quickly found out that his cell phone did not work out there because they needed to have a certain data plan. And so Eric was left without a cell phone. The only way to come in contact with his parents was to write a letter or to use the home phone. Eric then moved up the steps to find his room. When he had his hand on the first door, Big Daryl yelled no, not to go in that room. Eric's mind quickly started to wonder what was in that room that they didn't want him to see. He let it go for the night and went and slept in his mom's old room just fine. When Big Daryl and Oma had left in the morning, he went into the room to find out that it was his uncle who had passed away, Dan's room. In there, he saw a bunch of war medals because Dan had passed away in battle. And he also saw a lot of pictures of Dan with his hunting dog, and there was hunting clothes in the dressers and other hunting and camping accessories. The next day, after Oma and Big Daryl left, Eric found a stray dog outside in the yard. It was a really nice female dog, but it had been attacked by a porcupine and was all around her snout. Eric called the vet to come pull the quills out of the dog, and he did. The dog didn't have a collar or any form of identification, so Eric wanted to keep it. Oma was alright with it, but Big Daryl was not going to allow it because it reminded him too much of Dan and his dog. When Big Daryl had told Eric that the vet was going to come back and pick up the dog, Eric started planning to run away with the dog. Eric grabbed all the hunting supplies out of Dan's room and his hunting clothes and camping supplies and took off. For 3 days, Eric and the dog, Quill, had lived out on their own. But a bad snowstorm had blown in, and Eric had to seek shelter in an abandoned farm building. A man had found Eric in the building and was going to take him back to take him back to his grandparents. And he was saying how they put out a $5,000 reward to find him. Eric knew that Big Daryl and Oma didn't have that kind of money, so he quickly ran away from the person trying to collect the reward and backtracked his way all the way back to the house. When he arrived back at his grandparents' house, they were very delighted to see them. And Big Daryl was a changed man. He was a more happier person and had moved himself to get over Dan, when before he didn't say much and he tried to avoid saying anything and never said anything about Dan, but now it seemed that he had gotten over it when Eric came back. He told Eric that he already lost one son. He didn't want to do it again. Oma, who had not driven in 34 years when Dan died because she couldn't concentrate and crashed her car 3 times in 1 week, started driving again. From Eric running away, it repaired the relationship between his grandparents, and his grandparents were a lot happier people because they were able to get over Dan's death because of Eric running away.